Test one, two. I don't think it's nice.
All right, new microphone.
They've got flaky a couple times.
All right, moving to number 3, resume in public session at 6:55 p.m. I'll make a resume at 6:55 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Whitman?
Here.
Mr. Craddy?
Here.
Mrs. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Quagliano?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Troy?
Here.
Mrs. Wiley? Here.
All right, with that, there is no action out of closed session, so we will move on to number 4, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, any public comments? Okay, all right, not seeing any public comment, we'll move fast. Revision and adoption of the agenda, number 6. Are there any changes we need to the agenda? There's quite a few things in here. Anybody have anything? Change? All right, I will make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Craddy. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, we'll move on to number 7, the superintendent's report. This is part.
Sure, first we'd like to recognize our donations for this month. The American Legion Post 673 donated a $500 check for the Huntley High School band. So we thank them for their commitment and support to one of our extracurricular activities out at the high school. And then in the packet, I had just put a brief memo of a few of the things that July has brought. By no means is this all of the things, but this month was a lot of IWES reporting, a lot of state reporting, end of the year kinds of things, a lot going on with our expenditure reports where all of our grants are updating and submission of new grants for next year under our consolidated district plan, submitting any of our RTO type things and progress reports to those, along with here at the end of the month, going to be completing what they call the end of the year collection. So it has a little of everything. Our truancy, our attendance just got pulled, discipline, just a variety of different things. And those, some of that is pulled for things that will go with the report card or other aspects. And so this month is just real busy, still closing out, but starting the 24-25 school year. We'll be working on finalizing our documentation and report that we will be bringing to an August or September meeting here of our strategic plan indicators, and then having discussions within our district administration over the next 2 weeks, bringing in our building administration on looking at KPIs for next year, the last year of this 5-year strategic plan, bringing those to get feedback and thoughts from the board as to directionally what are some of the things that you would like to see, and then we can bring that back all together with a final look at what of those KPIs would be for the 24-25 year, as well as beginning that timeline for completion of a new 5-year strategic plan before the end of the school year next year. So that's pretty exciting. And then one of my favorite things to do is to sit down and meet with almost all the principals, a couple that are out of town, but we'll be wrapping up doing goal setting. Part of those are the things that will tie to the school improvement plan with the academic side, but then also just personal and professional goal setting there, and we'll be doing the same thing with cabinet. We utilized a new cycle of inquiry model. It's much more, I think, aligned with a rubric. We utilize that as professional development, and I just feel that this new model has better opportunities for that personal professional growth there. And actually, HR was notified not that long ago, maybe a month ago, that all of the principal evaluation and administrator evaluation trainings moving forward are all moving with this model in place. So we kind of got out ahead of that, and Dr. Zare, I believe this will be the same that principals will be using with their department chairs, deans, and assistant principals as well moving forward. So again, that's just a really fun part of the job there with that. And again, just some highlights this morning. Mrs. Barr and myself and Ms. Moore went over and did some filming of our welcome back to staff, students, and parents. Got that plug in there for attendance. We actually got our new slogan. Not going to tell it yet because that's our August presentation. We'll be talking all about that, but did get that in that message and that letter going forward. So just a little bit about what we've been having out of the superintendent office this month. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Moving on to number 8, Assistant Superintendent Learning and Innovation, Dr. Pringle.
All right, well, summer is a very busy time in the Curriculum and Special Services Learning and Innovation Department, and so we've been hard at work. We have lots of teachers who are doing some curriculum work, doing some professional learning and trainings over the summer, as well as our directors of curriculum and principals have been doing some PD themselves on the new math, new literacy, all the different parts to help us be better. So we take summer's busy for our department, and I just want to say also thank you to our O&M department. They have a heavy lift right now with getting all the supplies out to the buildings and making sure that when staff and students start back, everything's there. So it's a busy time over here. I did go ahead and give quite a few updates in my memo, but with the ACT, as we all know, the state of Illinois chose late spring, I'd say almost summer, to switch from the SAT to the ACT. And so we've been working with Ms. Kish at the high school, our associate principal for curriculum, and making a plan for that. We are going to go ahead and give the state of Illinois is going to do the pre-ACT 9 and the pre-ACT 10 to our 9th and 10th graders, and then they will also be doing the spring ACT for 11th graders next year. We feel that we need to give our 11th graders a try at taking the ACT in the fall. So in the past, we've given the PSAT and an SQT as a district in the fall to give kids a chance to take the SAT. And so imagine this, ACT does have a pre-ACT, and so we are not going to offer the PSAT and an SQT to all students. We're going to instead do the pre-ACT to give them that chance. But like any other assessment, students could still take the PSAT and MSQT, which is the National Merit Assessment, on a Saturday scheduled throughout the high school if parents choose to take it. So we've always done that. We've always offered some ACT and SAT rotations, and we're just going to move that there. But we really want to make sure our students are ready and they haven't taken this assessment, and it does test different skills. It thinks a different way. Ms. Kish also, we sent a couple of people to get some training on what some prep work might need to look like for ACT, and we've been doing some curriculum work to help make sure that we've reordered a couple of things with math because of the way they're assessing that, and with the timing, we want to make sure that kids have been exposed to what they need to be exposed to. So a lot of work there. Seems like a minor shift to some, but it's a pretty big one for all of us. We want to make sure our students are set up for success. We also completed the dual language lottery, and Mrs. Jacobson, that was one of her first tasks coming in. We're excited to have her. She started up a couple of weeks ago. We did have about 75 students interested in dual language. That is less than in the past, but still a pretty good number. The majority of those families are native English-speaking families that are in that mix. And one of the goals that came from our review this last year was to make sure that our classroom for dual language was comprised of the true 50-50, which means 50% Spanish speakers, 50% English speakers. And so this year, when we look at the lottery, and we took a look at all the students over at Cheswick who wanted to continue in dual and who are coming in as a native Spanish speaker, there was only enough students to follow that true 50-50 model for one classroom. And so our recommendation for next year is one classroom. If that ever changes, then we would of course open a second classroom. But right now we are really close to 50-50, and we are excited to see if that language model will help our kids learn more in both languages, because that was one of the things we've been hearing from our families and our staff, that it's been difficult to not have that 50-50 split. And so I know that's a change, but it is something that, based off of enrollment and who our population is, that's our recommendation moving forward. The classroom teacher is excited to be able to do that. She's aware. She is, Ms. Jacobson has been working on the curriculum to help support with Benchmark Adelante. And the positive is that many of our students will be, since Adelante is aligned to the English curriculum we'll be using, there will be a lot more connectivity. So we don't think that people will feel so isolated at the end of the day. But just wanted to let you know that's where we landed with those numbers by trying to stick true to what we determined as a part of our review. I gave a lot of summer professional learning we've been doing. A large thing that Dr. Zira and I have been working on also is year 2 of the teacher vacancy grant. We were awarded it's a 3-year grant where we get approximately $311,000, $500, and it's actually 69 this year, not 68. They changed that really fast in the last day in there. And the purpose of that is to address chronic teacher shortages by attracting, hiring, and retaining personnel. So we are going to continue offering what we did this year, which was some reimbursement to teachers to get their special ed and their ESL endorsements. We had 16 teachers do this last school year, which is super exciting. And we have 6 additional staff members work towards achieving a CTE endorsement, which is something we also have a gap in, is making sure we have enough staff to support the career technical education. So we're hoping we get more staff that want to do that. We've also purchased some promotional supplies for recruitment to try to welcome our staff here to Huntley and help them feel connected. And then if there's any other dollars, we'll go ahead and use that towards some instructional supplies and materials for teachers based off of their need. So we went ahead and submitted that as our 2nd year of it, and we should have no issues. And then the last thing, I know Ms. Lombard highlighted a little bit about this, but the school report card will be coming out. The official release date is October 30th, the day before Halloween. And there are some changes to the school report card, a couple of new metrics. I put a summary in here for you. Nothing huge that's going to change any of our data. Especially, they did announce so recently that there will be a team put together across the state to start to evaluate the cut scores and the criteria and the proficiency levels. And so they're not changing any of that for this year, but they are developing a team to try to recalibrate and renorm, and that work will be done in the next year. And that's all I have.
Dr. McCriddle, we did talk about the personnel report that's going to be approved here in a little bit. We had some potential changes.
Yes.
Could you talk about the impact on curriculum?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lombard. I'm sorry, it was on the sticky note and it got under my mic. We have had a couple of last-minute music resignations, which are a hard-to-fill position in something that is, especially this late in the game. We have one on the report, and then we believe there might be another coming as well. And so when we're looking through that, we are trying as hard as we can to post that and try to hire someone. The candidate pool is not strong. We had a position posted, and there aren't that many applicants in there. So we are diligently working. We're calling people. We're going to go ahead and send some stuff out to a couple of universities to see if we can try to fill these roles. But in case we cannot, we are working through some Plan B options, which might include some changes to our 5th grade band orchestra program. Currently, our 5th grade band orchestra program students receive 2 individual lessons a week plus a full band or orchestra lesson, and we might need to look at some of that in order to fill some of the music vacancies, because those music positions, 90 minutes a week of elementary music is in our contract. It supports our music program and also provides plan time and things like that for our teachers. And so we are taking a look at that. I'm going to give you a heads up that we're trying really hard to go ahead and try to find someone to fill that. That's our top #1 goal, but if not, we might need to make some changes in our program.
Are there alternatives that you're allowed to use for teaching some of those lessons? Do you have to have a education license, or could you use someone who teaches piano or teaches something like that to help?
They would still need to file that K-12 music. They would still need a teacher licensure to come through and have a facility from the outside.
Okay, thank you.
question, Dr. McCringle. So the update with the MCAS multilingual. So there's been talk in the past, I think in August, you're planning on getting an update of how we're maybe gonna fold in the RAD group, which was predominantly at the high school, but we're trying to make it more holistic for the whole district. So will that be being tied into the overall plan of, partnering with MCAT, MSL, all of that?
100%. So our impact will have actually met with Ms. Jacobson this last week, and they had a couple of the officers, and we have some initial plans to try to connect that for sure, but that's something we're working through.
I believe you'll be giving that update in August.
In August, yes, the August calendar, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, no other questions? Thank you. All right, moving on to number 9, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Allmeyer.
Thank you very much. In front of you, you have the monthly fiscal updates. There's a few items on there I definitely want to cover with the board. All very good news, although sometimes good news isn't great news when you're a little disappointed in one of your vendors, but we'll get to that last. The budget and the 5-year plan, we will be bringing the next draft of the budget to the August COW. That will be the display draft of the budget. Tonight, we're also going to have the board approve the budget hearing date, so you'll see that coming down the pipeline later. The finance team, we're in the middle of year-end preparation, right? We got a lot of year-end entries going on. We got preparing for the auditor. The auditor was actually here this week, today, doing some preliminary work, so all went well, I was told. So that's good news on that front, and we'll continue to keep the board apprised on the year-end progress. When we do go over the revenue and expenditure report, we'll go over that at a very high level, because during the year-end process, while we're doing a lot of year-end entries to book all of our accruals from receivables to payables to accruals for projects, to make sure that we have everything locked and loaded for the audit, and the preliminary results indicate that, well, and we'll talk about why here shortly, but that we're tracking pretty well with budget, and we're going to end up a little closer to budget than we thought because of the news I'm about to tell you. What else can I tell you? Talking about audits, we had a transportation audit, an ISB transportation and federal grants audit, and they came in and looked at fiscal year 2022. And so they looked at the transportation reimbursement as well as those related federal grants, and all went very well. In fact, we received some major kudos from the auditor saying, especially on the federal grant side, he's never seen really any other district with the quality of the backup and the process for which Tom Rodriguez, our accounting supervisor, has put in place. So all went very well on that, as well as the transportation audit, not an issue. You know, you're always concerned that you're over-claiming and they paid you too much. Well, that didn't happen. But what did happen was during that process, and over the years, we caught this a few years ago, there was a project, a concrete project. So if you look at the transportation parking lot, you'll notice that the buses are parking on concrete. Well, back in the day, it used to be all asphalt, and all of our buses were sinking. And so several years ago, 8 years ago maybe, Doug, we ended up redoing that parking lot, and that project was coded actually to the O&M fund. And a few years after that happened, we caught that, and ISB would not allow us to recapture that lost depreciation. You have to wait for an audit to happen. Well, everybody gets audited every handful of years, so we knew that was happening. So we brought that up to the auditor, and we were able to recapture approximately $104,000 in reimbursement. So this next year, that will be a credit that comes back to us. It'll increase our transportation reimbursement. So that's kind of good news on that front as well. So just wanted to update the board on that. So good news on those 2 items. Also wanted to update the board that we learned during the month that the Volkswagen, we're all familiar with the Volkswagen grant program, for which we, the district, received 4 electric buses. Well, now McHenry and Kane County are part of the priority areas that are eligible to utilize that grant moving forward. And in the memo, I noted a few things, and I'm going to update you. So there was an opportunity to apply for that grant, and that grant is 75% of the cost of a bus would be covered by the VW grant. So a bus at $350,000 would ultimately cost the district $85,000 for an electric bus versus that of what we would pay for a propane or diesel bus, and we'll talk about that in a second. What I had noted in the memo was the VW grant has a process which, because it was all based on emissions, they wanted you to get rid of an old bus, right, an old diesel bus, and then buy a new electric bus so you could reduce emissions in the state. But it was hard-coded in the VW grant that it had to be a 2009 model year or earlier bus. So several years ago when we applied for it, we had a lot of 2009. But not only do they say, do you have to have a 2009 model year bus, engine year bus, but it has to be driven over the last 2 years, 80% operational. So when we were looking at this grant, well, we didn't have any 2009s left, and the two that we did have, well, we didn't really drive them too much over the last 2 years, so that unqualified us for this grant. But as part of that grant, you're allowed to work with other neighboring school districts in the same county, and if they have 2009 buses, and you want to trade them for some other trade-ins you have, you can do that. In fact, the Illinois EPA encourages you to do that because they just want those old buses off the road. All right, subsequent to this memo being written, what we also learned from the Illinois EPA is they're waiving that 80% mileage requirement, and if you have 2009 buses on the lot, they'll take them. They just want them off the road. So not only did we learn we had two 2009 engines, school buses that we could use to trade for this grant, we also learned that we have two 2010 model year buses that actually have 2009 engines in them. So we actually have 4. So why do I tell you all this? Well, there is a high likelihood that we will maybe be eligible to receive this grant. We may be awarded this grant, and at some point in the future, we would bring this forward to the board to make a decision to move forward or not. I will tell you, I think it would be my recommendation to move forward because I also subsequently learned, I was talking with the general manager of Bluebird, the bus manufacturer, and I said, hey, by the way, I know propane buses have been on the rise. The last time we bought a propane bus, a 72-passenger propane bus, it was approximately $122,000. But I was talking to some other CFOs who said they recently paid $155,000. And in talking to the general manager, he said, all buses are going up. And he goes, next year, if I were to give you an estimate for your budget, a diesel bus would go for approximately $160,000, and a propane bus would go for approximately $170,000. So I tell you that because if we can get an electric school bus for $85,000 versus buying a propane or diesel at $160 or $170, that would yield approximately an $85,000 savings per bus, and that would yield budget savings of approximately $340,000 to $350,000. And the reason I also bring it up is we do have an infrastructure to support up to 12 electric buses. We have talked in the past about the Renew America grant, and that is a grant that is covering 95% of the cost of 2 electric buses. So we're still hoping to hear from the Department of Energy to give us the go-ahead to move forward with that. But with those 2 buses that are somewhere down in the future for us, and if we were to be awarded these 4 buses for the Volkswagen, that would provide us the 6 buses we need for next school year and would reduce our budget by approximately $340,000, $350,000. And it would also put us in a position where we would probably never have to talk about electric buses again for a long time because we would be filling 10 of 12 of our spots out there and be in a really good spot moving forward.
Mr. Meyer, not only the 10 to 12 spots, it's not, we wouldn't fill just to fill spots because we have been working with Dr. There in Transportation that because of mileage, probably would maintain any of those buses being on this campus and the routes here, which would be about 10 buses. Is that correct?
Correct. That's my understanding. So I just wanted to make the board aware of all of those things, that we are moving forward with the grant application for the Volkswagen. If we do hear back, we can have a deeper conversation. But I'd almost like to have that conversation before we finalize the budget for next year. And hopefully, we learn by September, or the first week of September, whether or not we are awarded that grant. I've been told it's a first come, first served with the remaining dollars available. There's $17 million remaining that are available from the Illinois EPA within this round. And they said they are not seeing a lot of applications because a lot of school districts, they just don't have the 2009 or earlier buses. So we were told that there is a good probability we would be awarded. So that's good news. And moving forward, bad news on the cost of a propane bus and a diesel bus, for sure. What else? Well, let's talk about health insurance. So I think the board is aware because you probably looked at the memo, the fiscal update memo. During the month, we received news on two fronts from Blue Cross Blue Shield. As we all know, last year, fiscal year, was a very, very challenging year, and the current year. It's a very challenging year from a health insurance perspective. We have had more large claimants in the pipeline than we've ever had these past two fiscal years as well as plan years. But on a plan year basis, we receive stop loss insurance. There's individual stop loss insurance that we've talked about, but there's also something that's called aggregate stop loss insurance. And we have aggregate stop loss insurance, and I think we pay anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 a year. And what that insurance does is, from an actuarial standpoint, when the actuary says, we think and we estimate your claims for plan year 2023, this is an example, to be $13 million, we have aggregate stop loss insurance that if it goes above 115% of that number, Blue Cross Blue Shield will then pay every single claim. Not only do we have stop loss insurance on an individual basis, if an individual is very sick and has to, for some reason, incurs more than $165,000 of claims, then Blue Cross Blue Shield steps in and covers that on our behalf. But this is on the aggregate side. And we are learning just now that while plan year 2023, calendar year 2023, we exceeded that aggregate by approximately $454,000. And so they are giving us a credit in the June statement here for $454,000 for exceeding the aggregate limit. In our past, in my 15 years here, we have never come close to the aggregate. We've never exceeded the aggregate. In fact, in talking with a lot of CFOs across the state, I only know one other district that has ever exceeded the aggregate, and that was Belvedere a handful of years ago. So it does happen, but it doesn't happen as often as you think, and that's why the insurance on that is only as low as it is, right? That's a very low premium for the aggregate. So I did want to make the board aware of that, so that's good news. You may ask, well, why did it take so long? Well, it takes a little while because they have to go through an audit, but they also have to wait several months for all the claims to come in. So if you've ever heard the phrase, claims incurred but not yet paid, right? There's always a lag period for doctors sending in claims related to services performed before December 31st. And so they have to let those claims all settle. And then once those claims settle, they'll go in and audit from an insurance standpoint that aggregate stop loss insurance. And so they finalize that, and upon finalization, that's when we learn of the credit. That's good news. That will help us in the current year because we will receive that, and that will reduce our current year expense, our June 2024 expense on health insurance. Now, this next one, in my memo, we call it an RX rebate credit. Well, Blue Cross Blue Shield is giving us another credit for $721,000, almost $722,000. And so we're receiving credits of $1.1 million in the month of June, and that is also related to calendar year, plan year 2023, because, well, Blue Cross Blue Shield overbilled us. You never like to hear that somebody has overbilled you, but this was identified actually by our broker when they were reviewing all of our expenses, all of our claims, every piece of our claims, and they looked at a 5500 report, which is a tax form, from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they noticed that a RX rebate credit was missing. or it was very low. It should have been almost $700,000 higher than it was. And in reviewing all of the data, they brought that to the attention of Blue Cross Blue Shield, who said, you're right. We went in 2023, they went through a billing conversion, and the RX credit, because we received that credit on a per employee basis, per member basis, on a per month basis, and that credit should be embedded within the billing that we received from Blue Cross Blue Shield. And upon their implementing a new billing system, that was missed on their end. And so Alliance, our broker, caught that, and a good thing they did. And we did have subsequent phone calls with Blue Cross Blue Shield. They obviously apologized up and down, and they really had no other excuses to tell us what happened with their new billing system. So since that time, we have talked about ensuring what do we need to do to ensure that when we receive those invoices, they're not easy to understand invoices, the Blue Cross Blue Shield invoices. But we need to make sure that we are reviewing those invoices and we know every piece of that invoice to ensure that we're catching these types of things. Not that HR, not that finance could have really caught that. But moving forward, we're working with Alliance, our broker, and we're working with Blue Cross Blue Shield to ensure that we 100% know how to review and understand those invoices, that they're also looking at those invoices so that this doesn't happen again. We did ask them to review plan years 21, 22, as well as the current plan year, and all of our current plan years or prior plan years and the current plan year of 2024, we have had no billing issues. So this is definitely an isolated 2023 plan year issue. So it's good news, but it's really, it's a tough pill to swallow. I am also working with them because when you lose $721,000 and interest rates are where they are today, I hammered them pretty hard, expecting something in the range of, well, $35,000 to $50,000 of lost interest earnings. And so we are currently working with Blue Cross Blue Shield on this new, when we go through this new open enrollment, to ensure that we recover those types of dollars, or they provide us concessions. And I want those concessions documented, because that's what was on the table by that amount of money not coming back to us. But we are also looking at Blue Cross Blue Shield from that perspective as well. So did want to update the board on all those things. That will put us in a fairly good position on health insurance for the current year. It doesn't make the claims go away. It doesn't make the history of the claims going away. Our claims are still pretty darn high. Mm-hmm. And for next year's budget, we're still going to have to review what the actuary steps up with here in the next month or so to determine where we think we're going to be next year. But for the current year, from an expense standpoint, expense versus budget, this is going to put us in a pretty good position for the fiscal year. So, any questions? That was a lot.
I guess I'll ask a couple just clarifying questions. Half the $700,000 of the prescription rebate should have been in the previous budget year. Is that correct? Am I understanding it correctly?
Correct. So half would be in this year and half would be in fiscal year 23.
We're obviously going to take the benefit all
in the current year because the credits are shown.
And so this year, I think in calendar year 24, we're supposed to get about $1 million of rebates. And we have confirmed that number is coming in the bills.
Correct, yes. So rebates are coming in as they should on the current plan year.
And from the other discussion that we had, did you have any discussions around when they told us that 36% of our pharma spend, our medical benefits, our pharma spend, which is higher than other similar districts, is that net of these rebates, or is that ignoring the rebates? It's
a very, very good question, and with confidence, I can't give you that answer. I would have to follow up on that, unless Dr. Zare? Yeah.
We'd have to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mr. Bittman is asking a question based on a presentation that was provided to us from Blue Cross Blue Shield and Alliance And that's where those numbers are being seen, and so that's a great question. We can get back to you on that.
The presentation was 3 weeks ago.
So,
And I would,
It was right around the same time as they discovered.
generally on the RX rebate side, or on the rebate side, I will answer the question this way. I would expect it to not be net,
right.
because generally they show the claims gross. So the number I think we were seeing at 36% would be a gross number and does not include the $721,000 RX rebate, because that's something that just happens on the side. So the cost of the RX should be the number we were looking at it, going at 36%. But I will confirm.
I'm bringing this up for the benefit of the meeting of,
Yes.
our district seems to have quite a bit more pharmaceutical spend than other similar organizations, according to our broker alliance. So it's something we need to look at.
Yeah, and generally, it's on the mix. It's the experience of our plan. We may have one or two more employees that are receiving a very high-priced specialty drug. And when we do go in details, sometimes when we sit down with Blue Cross Blue Shield and we sit down with Alliance and we review, a lot of times we are reviewing specific drugs or specific claimant numbers, because we don't see the claimants, and we see that type of information. So a lot of times it's the mix, unfortunately, that can drive that.
And what things are being, would we be talking with Alliance, the broker, about strategies to mitigate some of these higher propensity for these higher claims? Has any of that discussion gone in on suggestions that they can have? I know that we have wellness programs that are in place. The return on those is usually not very great, but
Correct.
what other suggestions might they have for us to try to mitigate?
Well, a lot of times when it comes to cost, right, the options are a reduction of benefits. I think at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about that. So Alliance is very good at, when we go through an annual review and we go through an open enrollment review of what where the actuary feels we will be in the upcoming year. We talk about strategies to reduce costs. We talk about whether it's wellness or it's a reduction of benefits. They do a very good job of saying, if you were to reduce this benefit, if you were to do certain things, here are the percentage savings to the overall plan. And we do that on an annual basis. But when we do that as a committee and we do that with union representatives, we're doing it as a committee, it's a tough thing to do, is to ask our members, to disrupt our members and make plan reductions.
One of the things that we can do, and we can bring that up, I believe we have an insurance committee, usually is end of August, beginning of September, maybe. I think you guys are working on scheduling that, is to, after that review, ask them to sit on what are some of the themes maybe that we're seeing, whether it is with prescriptions, maybe it is with some other component that might be driving the costs, is to talk. Typically, the first is to look at what are the benefits, but there are other ways, and so we can ask them to look at what other models might be out there. One of the last things that came up a number of years ago was to look at a clinic model and to see, could we do something with that? In order to do something with that, it would, and to be cost effective and all of those things, it would have at the time needed to be an elimination of one of our plans, and that would have been the HMO plan. But I think that that's a very fair question that we can ask at that first insurance meeting there, looking at what we saw over the last year or last couple of years. What are some things that maybe we can be looking at and bring to that insurance committee outside what normally is talked about as reduction of benefits or things like that? So we will make sure that that's one of the topics that we put on that agenda.
I don't think that we want to go strictly to reduction in benefits. That should be the last option. So they should be coming with other suggestions, that being the last one. And that's just what I'm looking to see what they're exploring. Correct.
And in the last meeting, Ms. Miley, we talked about a pool, right? Becoming part of a pool. I actually have a meeting next week with a representative from Gallagher where they oversee multiple pools. They oversee pools with, 20 and 30 districts in each of those. And so I'm going to be meeting with the Gallagher team to discuss options and what does that look like, right? Walk me through the process, walk us through advantages, disadvantages, estimates if that's even possible at this point in time, just so that we have a better understanding of that process.
Yeah, I guess just to add some color for anybody who's watching and listening, our healthcare benefits as a total amount from 2022 to what they're forecasting for next year look like they may increase 50%. So that's a much bigger number than even the inflation numbers that's out there. So that's a big number, and I'm not trying to. We still have to go through the negotiations and understand that. We are limited in what we can do on some of the creative things with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So for example, one of the things you do is you're self-funded, you split out your pharmaceutical, you have that all priced out, you take a group that would pay the same pharmaceuticals, but you pay a lot less for it. We can't do that because of the plan we're in with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So these are the things that we have to work through the committee and understand and make sure it's win-win for everybody involved. But we are locked in a lot of different things, and typically when you get locked in on something, the prices go up. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is they know we're kind of locked in as other districts. So, sorry, a lot of discussion here. Any other comments for Mr. Altmeyer? All right. So we will continue with Mr. Altmeyer.
Thank you very much. And we won't spend too much time on this. We did touch a little bit about some of the financials. In front of you, you have the May 2024 financial executive summary. Although that's showing a deficit, obviously it does not reflect all of the year-end entries that we're going to make in June. In the month of August, I might be able to give you a preliminary high-level view as to where we think we're going to end up as presented to the auditor before audit adjustments. So we can do that moving forward. But if you were to look at page 2 under the health insurance expense, right, we're currently at 12.7 million total annual health insurance expense, understanding that we are going to receive in June a $1.1 million credit plus the June claims. We're going to end up being a lot closer to budget. I still think we might be a little over budget at year end, but we're not going to be $1.5 million over budget as previously estimated. So that's good news on that front. On the dashboard, you can continue to see really good things with the impact fees and the interest earnings, and you're going to see those rise even a little more as we record the fourth quarter interest earnings that just came in, and we'll talk about that next month. But everything's looking pretty good. For categoricals, we did receive our categorical payments on June 1st, so those will be in the June financial statement, as well as we are still waiting on the 8th and final payment. So we receive 8 payments a year for corporate personal property replacement taxes. On that line item, we still may fall a little bit short of budget historically based on the amount of that July payment that we typically receive. So with all that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on the May financials or any other questions on the overall financial status of the district.
So we're a little blind because we can't access board book right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So ask,
Okay.
is there questions we should be asking? Because
No, I don't think so. That's normally why I speak up and just tell you what you need to know. No, I think, like I said, I think, the news that we heard, although disappointing, is going to be very helpful to us for fiscal year 2024. Health insurance, I still think we're going to be a little over budget. Certainly we have line items, big picture line items, Medicaid, we're going to fall short of budget. I think we talked about that historically. CPPRT, we may fall a little short of budget as well. But interest earnings and impact fees and transition fees are going to carry us through, I think, where we're going to be within budget for knock on wood, for fiscal year 2024. We still have to go through the audit process and finalize all of our accruals.
Yeah, it's not based on my memory from a week, month ago.
So those are great questions, Mr. Corvette.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, I did not realize you could not see
We
that.
can't see.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Allmeyer? All right, we'll move to
Thank you.
10, Misty.
It's hard to follow the budget guy and make it exciting. Just kidding. We just have some quick updates, like Dr. McCriddle has shared. There's a lot going on in learning and innovation and special services as part of that. Just to share a couple updates in our board memo. One being we did actually get our wheelchair accessible van delivered. Last time I reported it was coming, and it arrived, and it's fantastic. We were very excited about that. Also wanted to give you a status update on the activity bus that we purchased. Similarly, wheelchair accessible bus dedicated to the LIGHT program. We knew when we asked for approval back in November that it would take almost a year to get that. It is expected to arrive in October. It would have arrived a little earlier, but there were some issues with inventory and things along that nature. So that's coming in October. Our team has been debriefing what a wonderful year we had with Special Olympics, and our Special Olympics, the administrative team really kind of working on the plans for Special Olympics are planning to expand Special Olympics into next year. So we met together as an administrative team and consulted with the Region B folks and plan to expand Special Olympics. So that's exciting, and it's coming. We anticipate next year being able to expand throughout the district, ages 8 to 22, which is what we're able to do through Special Olympics, offer a fall sport and maintain our spring sport, and then also looking to potentially add in the future a winter sport. So that is exciting. I wanted to update you on that. We learned a lot and have more to go, so we're excited. And then finally, Unique Learning System, we just wanted to give a big shout out to, we have a summer implementation team working to roll out the unique curriculum, which is for our really complex learners in the district who need an alternative curriculum. We have that team working to roll out an implementation guide with resources, professional development, and things along those lines. So we have 5 teachers and an administrative team working to get that guide and plan up and running. So we're very excited about that, and just wanted to update you on those highlights. Any questions? Much easier than Mr. Allmeyer.
You can follow the finance guy.
Yeah, no problem, sir.
All right, no pressure, Mr. Rankosic. Number 11.
Hold my beer, says Mr. Rinka.
So just update the board, we still have not seen invoices from ComEd since January for Square Barn campus, and since April 16th for Lee Road Harmony campus. That was 11 out of the 36 bills per year that we should see from our utility company, and had no word on when they might come. In your board packet, there is an attachment about the tallying of the changes in cost for the roofing project, which is going full speed ahead right now. We had a big surprise there. I'm trying to think when this started. Thursday last week, or month, yeah, because it was just a couple of days. They were uncovering the Performing Arts Center, the seating area. Backstage was area is a separate rough area, for whatever reason. Well, there is a reason. We found what the reason was. There's a different kind of structural deck. There's a different kind of structural deck underneath the roof insulation supporting the roof system over the seating area. It's poured concrete. I would have to, I'm very confident that without talking to Leggett, who's been gone now for a long, long time, we designed that. It surely has to do with providing a dead mass for sound deadening. So there's no running like an airplane or anything with that thing. I think the stuff that knows that that's heavy of a mass up there. But that changed everything on how we work, and we found moisture in the roofing insulation. Very consistent. They had ripped open a quarter of it. And, I was up there on the roof with the foreman looking at it, and I called the consultant, and the sidewalk stood pretty heavy duty for about a day and a half once we got going on it. And, the end result is all the insulation on the roof has to be replaced. So I, trying to think of how in the world we could, economize this besides the simple fact that unit prices we have in the bid are for spot repairs. They rip open the roof and there might be a couple of boards. So it's so many dollars a square foot. This is a much larger scale. It's 12,380 square feet. It's a lot of area. And so we've done this before where we plead with the contractor for some concessions because of the economies of scale. And we usually come out very well. And on this one, I think we came out very well. The consultant and I had a long talk, and what was existing was 2 layers of 1.5 inch insulation. And since we're putting a cover board on the new system, it's a board under top of the insulation, underneath the roofing plies that adds some life to the system. It's a very good investment. And we can stagger the joints on that, therefore we don't need 2 layers of insulation underneath, we could put one layer of 3-inch board. And we could drop that cost down from, drop that cost down from $123,000 for just the insulation and not now the vapor barrier, which we also need under there, and to $80,000. But then we continued the discussion with the contractor, economy of scale, blah, 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 blah. We need a vapor barrier, and we got them down to $49,075 for the insulation part, and the vapor barrier, good quality insulation that we have to hot mop on, almost like putting on a plier roofing on the insulation. And the reason we're talking about that in this location is because that's a very high ceiling area. Control the air in there. Usually air stratifies and the hotter air rises and it captures humidity. We've done some things to the control system after living in that space for about 8 years. We finally found with our partner Verity that there was a control scheme that seemed very viable and wouldn't be an extraordinarily expensive mechanical system. Got that, we'd like to believe that humidity level got under control in like 2011 as well. But in those early years, this was going on. And that humidity was surely migrating in that roof insulation, so we looked at that. So we got that vapor barrier down to $34,900. So the all-in cost for that is $84,865, compared to what could have been close to like $160,000. We need to get this job done to get it the heck out of here before school starts, so they continuing to work. Don't just keep going. Usually in a roofing project, when they rip things open, they find insulation. We've got these unit prices, and we just keep going and update you as we go through the year, and we reconcile at the end. And because once it's open, we have to put it back together immediately. So there was only one other date so far where we had insulation, and that was July 3rd. It's the area that's over the corridor, or like I'm going to call it the lobby area in front of the PAC. That's a different roof area. When you walk in from door 9, there's a large area there with a terrazzo floor. And we had $4,373 worth of insulation there. I think I got that about right. And so far, our total tally is $89,208. It just goes to show you that we waited until year 22 on this. And we had all these other projects, we're juggling all these balls, and we couldn't get it to before the end of the warranty at year 20. But in the future, if we can kind of keep the balls juggling a little better, maybe we get to a little quicker and save these costs on insulation. That's always a vision, but we have to do what we have to do. The early years of owning these buildings, we had other problems. There's in our little lake here, and that is because we had remedial problems related to inferior construction. We had all kinds of legal fees on too. We did get fairly made whole, but not completely on those. But I think in the future things will progress a little better, be a little better on that. But in addition, I want to just give you a heads up. Another part of the process at this point in time is there's one more area to open up and replace the roof, and that is in the back area by the wood shop. There's a large dust collector on the south side of the building across from the tennis courts. It's up there. That area is the area GG. Area GG was scanned. We waited till right before the work was going to start because it didn't appear to be bad, but we're like, it's got the years, and we got another, but when we did this, it was in the fall. We said, let's just get this one more winter and get a better idea. There's indication that there is some field insulation there. But when you do these things, you peel off the rubber, roof that's there, and you start taking layers of insulation out. Usually what you find if there's a leak, as it goes through the layers, it migrates out, and there's actually more boards underneath. So we don't really know for sure what we're talking about there yet. But we'll know by the end of next week, because they're going to be back there, expectation on that. So that's the update on that. Is there any questions on that one before I move on to a couple of other things, just give you some good news? Okay, move on. Housekeeping is, overall, we're on schedule. It's going very well. I like to think the quality of service is better. It's pretty tough right now. We've got two buildings that are torn apart pretty good. Actually, by the end of tomorrow, Chesapeake will all be put back together. The floor finish is done. Very, very, very minor punch list. A handful of things left. And punch list round 2 that we gave the contractor and walked with him today. The housekeepers are all there. By tomorrow night, their expectations they're done and they're out of Chesapeake. Legee is going to start immediately following. That will put it 1 week behind. But in the background, all the things going on with the disruption in Legee and Chesapeake with the floor finish, our contractor chose to put some of their crew over at the high school. So they've got a lot of work done already there. So the normal flow is Legee, second to last, there's summer school there, and last is the high school because of summer school, and in the 2 sessions they usually have, and summer camps they have. And so we should be on track to be done on that. The floor finish contractor told us today, and we believe him from what we're seeing on his progress, they're going to work Saturday and they're going to be done. They'll just be, they asked us to come over to Legee and do the final order of the work area. We punch listed the first 3 quarters, and they learned by Chesapeake and our expectation very well, and they've minimized the punch list so far in the first 3 quarters of Legee. It should go really quick. So that should be put back together by the next week, and the floor finish. And we'll be back done. Roofing, we told you about that, but the expectation overall is that they'll be done by about August 4th, if the weather is nice to us. No more surprises. Looks like we got a good week of run now with the last yesterday, and so it'll continue. The curtain wall work that you see going on, you may see boom trucks out around in front of the high school. They've been there. We tried on their shoulder. They put a second crew in there, and at the rate they've been producing, that should be done. All the interior parts of the workmanship are done. We got a preliminary walk there a couple of days ago, so that should be done on time, no problem. Chesapeake chiller replacement is actually going to get a start tomorrow. We're going to start it up, do the first turn on of the unit. Balancing agent, commissioning agent will follow quickly, but the expectation is right now is that after tomorrow we'll be able to cool off the quarter of Chesapeake. It's just the main office, the library, the gym, a couple of classrooms across from the office, and a couple of classrooms across from the cafeteria and the cafeteria. And lastly, I know you're looking forward to the 10-year annual report on capital projects, the deep look that Mr. Lindquist, the new director of operations and maintenance, has been working very hard on. And he'll be presenting that to you on this first. Any other questions?
Any questions?
No.
Thank you. All right, moving on to number 12, the Director of Communications and Public Engagement, Ms. Carr.
Good evening, everybody. So in your agenda tonight, you should have the FOIA report. Any questions on that?
So I actually do have one. I happened to look because it's out there on, somebody asked for all the Amazon spending, and I was kind of taken aback that it was $2 million in a year. It's the spreadsheet I ended up correctly. Well, but is there something we can do to look at that? I don't know, just something to take on the side. That's a lot of spending on Amazon. There's risks with that, and then there's also the whole, maybe we could support more local. I know we've got an Amazon thing here, but something like that. $5 there.
We can take a look at that annually. We look at operational efficiency. We'll look at some things with financial here with some of our supplies and materials that we're purchasing. So, it's quick and easy. However, we can kind of take a look at this, some of those spending habits then, and are there other ways
Any other questions on FOIA from anybody?
The one on the redaction, question. So the redaction software that we've been using was put in years ago. This isn't a new program or a new system. So these were
Correct.
expenses that have been approved from the prior board, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Okay, I just
Yeah,
want to make sure.
and used for numerous reasons.
Right.
Not just for that. And then the other system that we use for that is just we pay as we use it.
Correct, right. One's a fixed cost, and the other one is a pay-as-you-go.
Correct.
Yep, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions on that?
I have a question.
Sure.
On the Amazon, without looking at that for you,
Yeah.
I looked at it last week, and I'm trying to remember. So is that amount, like on the Amazon account that we have, or is that just credit card Amazon charges?
I'm actually not sure.
Just because I've seen on the ASA reports, we have an account with Amazon, right?
We do.
A couple,
Mhm.
or whatnot. So are these charges on our credit card, or is this on?
It could be both. It could
Or
be both.
both.
It could be
Okay.
both.
I was
for
just
sure.
curious if that's an amount for just one of those, or,
We should be able to review that detail.
I wasn't sure if it was in there, and I don't have it in front of me, I couldn't remember if it was.
I think it's a total, but we can
Okay.
get back to you on that.
Thank you.
And then just the general report, starting with some fun news, is the grand finale of our Raiders Read Together with Charlotte's Web and our families will be on Monday. So that's just been a really fun activity, I think, for us and for the community. We've had good attendance, parents and kids that come out and enjoy the reading together, but also the activities that are done afterwards. So it's always something kind of meaningful, something kind of creative that Dr. McCrindle and her team kind of put together, and it's been great. So we're going to be kind of sad to see that go, but we hope everybody's enjoyed it. And then,
And we do invite everybody to join us, on the 9th to watch
Yes.
the culmination of
Yeah.
the movie night out on the football field.
Yep.
And I know we have some friends still out there doing the scavenger hunt throughout the community.
Yeah.
So that's been really great to see the community partnerships, with our local businesses and all of those things to encourage people to get out there and know more about our community.
I also wanted to just add, Ms. Lombard is one who thought of this idea quite a few years ago to bring this to us, and every year it's gotten better and better. And I personally love seeing the families that come back each and every year and connect, and they just love being there. So our team just helps support her, but definitely it's the team approach on that.
It's a lot of fun. Fun day of the week sometimes, right? Fun way to start off the week. So that's been really fun, and yes, Ms. Lombard mentioned the August 9th movie showing at Charlotte's Web. And I just wanted to mention too to everybody that Enjoy Hunting Week will kick off on August 4th, and that will run through the 10th. So they're just, kind of stay tuned, enjoyhunting.com. We'll show you all the different events for the week that our community partners are doing. A lot of free fun family activities happening that week. So the movie nights are nights that we host as part of that. So any questions on that? And then just a couple of communication tool updates for everybody. So this is what's keeping me and my department super busy. So we are really in high gear now with the new mass notification system. So been spending some time trying to make sure that all of the data gets moved over to this new system, which is PowerSchool Communicate School Messenger, is what it's called. And then lots of learning happening to make sure that we fully understand how to use the system and how to teach others to use the system and all that. So I actually just had a full training this morning, and then there's just lots of learning for us so that we can support our schools and all of this kind of stuff. And then we do have upcoming trainings happening for our schools, our principals, our admin assistants to use the system. So that's in about 2 weeks. We'll start that for principals, followed up with the training for our admin assistants on that Monday, August 5th. Any questions on that? This is going to be very similar to the system that we had before, so it's K-12. So it's primarily, one-way communication, being able to communicate with staff and families on email, text, phone call, that kind of thing. Our emergency system, as well as our regular communication. We're going to keep plowing ahead with that.
I'm gonna just circle back real quick to Mark, on the Amazon. I mean, we provide a vendor report annually. We're required by law. And so that's all published annually. It's probably on our website.
Correct.
On it. I mean, because again, I can't see, I had looked at this stuff this morning, but I don't remember exactly the question they were asking. Were they asking for a different period? I guess my question is really, if somebody's FOIAing information that's already available on our website, what obligation do we have to provide anything further other than tell them, go look at our website?
It was the details. This was the line, there was 12,000 line items of what we purchased. It was every order. It wasn't the summary amount that you'll find in the ASA.
Okay.
This was all the details. I think it was a business in Texas or something like that, that FOIA this. They're looking probably to figure out how to get business from the school district, but
You're right.
it was interesting information that was out there.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
Yeah, no.
That is correct. So second update on platforms and tools would be on our website. So we're also plowing ahead with that as well and trying to get that all set up. Our content migration has occurred, which is great. It's basically just a copy and paste of our current website that goes over to a new platform, which then is in a way that I can start to do some reorganization and trying to fine tune and make this even better than it was before. So again, lots of learning happening there and how to use the new tool, but it really is a great website, and I think we're going to be really happy that we did that. Hard to get everything done all at one time though, so we're going to delay the launch of that website until September so that we can make sure that we get through the transition to the new mass notification system with integrity so that everybody's comfortable with that. And then I can hopefully turn my full attention to the website once that gets done, but trying to keep both projects kind of moving at the same time. So, any questions from anybody on either of those? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 13, President's Report. I don't have any prepared remarks or anything like that, so I'll jump into 13.1, board discussion. I do have one item that I'll suggest for the August committee of the whole, which is in the policy group, just so people can think about it. I'm reflecting on the fact that we are going into a presidential election that might have some consternation with it and divide the community some. And I think we should review, and we've talked about this a little on the side, some of the policies that deal with how you're supposed to handle this in a classroom and dealing with it. I think we should also review how the school publications are supposed to handle controversial issues. And I think we should just, I'm not expecting any changes, but I think we should just review it as a board because the community may be divided on how they vote in November, but we really want the district focused on the kids. I think that's what the intent of the policy is, but I think we should review it just so that everybody sees that and hears that and we refresh it. That's all, if there's any comments. Hopefully that's not too controversial. Any other board discussion topics? Okay, with that, we'll move through several action items. Number 14, so 14.1, student handbook. Lombard.
For last month, we went ahead and brought forward all the handbooks, did ask that we go ahead and pull the high school component to just get a little bit further reflection on how unexcused absences are handled with the changes that are occurring across the board in how we're coding our attendance components. So the early childhood, elementary, middle school handbooks were all approved. The only change or the only difference being brought forward here is a number of our, as you know, a number of our codes are going to change for reasons and rationales from excused in the past to unexcused. And so as we were doing more of that deeper reflection on some of the reasons or rationales, if a vacation is going to be an unexcused code on there, in looking at what the handbook previously said, was for the first unexcused absence at the high school level, it was a warning. On the second unexcused day, it was a lunch detention, and then it progressed up. So there were a couple instances after a couple days, those were lunch detentions, so then that would go to after school for a few incidences, would then go up to in schools and all of that. In reflection and sitting down with the high school administration, with Mrs. Spears Dr. McCrindle, we were looking at, that's not the intent, right? If a student's family decides that we're going out of town, right, there's natural consequences there anyway, when you're looking at that impact of grades or things like that, and what might need to be made up afterwards. If I, as a parent, make that decision that the family's going, that vacation is probably more than one day. And so if the student comes back after a vacation, not only are they now making up the work that they need to do, get caught up with all of those components, they're, per what was in the handbook, coming back to 3 lunch detentions and an after-school detention. And I don't think that was the intent of what needed to happen there. And so in looking at that, if we truly want to tackle what is in a student there for their attendance, right, we need to look at that similar to interventions that we put in place for either behavioral or academic needs. And so those all may be for very, very different reasons. A student who might be skipping a certain class, all right, well, if they're intentionally going to school and missing class, well, that might be a detention, right? But if we go a little bit deeper in figuring out why students are missing those things, I'm going to pull up the handbook information in here. The change from that progressive of a warning all the way through into in-school and out-of-school suspensions has been updated as a recommendation that the school provides a range of responses to unexcused absences, and these include but are not limited to teacher-based interventions that could involve phone call home, conversation with the student and parents, increased monitoring of attendance patterns, Spears is in here right now as I speak, administrative communication via letters and or phone calls home, problem-solving meetings, those would include students and families in on those, interventions to support attendance, attendance intervention plans, specific to what is the need that that student has and why, when you peel back the onion, they're missing class or missing school. Resources provided to families to support attendance, potential of referral to the truancy officer, and that continued non-compliance with what that attendance intervention plan for that specific student is may result in a range of consequences of detention, loss of privileges. Maybe it's a change in the course, removal from that course, social probation, action hours, all of those things. So it's not saying there won't be a consequence, but again, just because we're moving from some of these things from excused rationale to unexcused, we wanted to make sure that that consequence really fit the behavior that was happening there. And so those things are still there. However, it's really going to tackle specifically for those students. And what's going to be extremely important is that partnership with the school, whether it's that classroom, the students, and the parents and administration to develop what's that plan. And part of that plan would be a monitoring process. I think that is going to, one, also help with the issues that we were seeing about students who were not fulfilling those. And some of those probably were non-compliance components. Others maybe were students who were not serving some of these consequences for things that, now, them not serving that is not under their control, but a component of why that was issued in the first place. Now, we did not make a change as the recommendation from the high school, and we support this from administration wholeheartedly on the responses for tardies. So if they are in school and they're just not getting to class on time, and that's a regular component there, you're in class, you're just not utilizing those, what is it now, 6, 7, however many minutes in between passing period. And so that is progressive, where there may be warnings and then lunch detention. So that component did stay the same. Now, these are very, very similar things that would be done at the elementary and the middle school level too, about creating that intervention plan similar to the whole thought of MTSS. And so that component of the handbook would reflect more of what does that look like on that individual basis. And again, because what's the reason that the student was obviously on it. So that was the major change we wanted to look at and bring back forward when we come in August and do the plan about all of attendance and the components there. We'll talk specifically about some of the procedures that will happen at the various levels a little bit more in depth with that, and then maybe the consequences of, hey, if we had X number of students, those instances were, they were in hundreds, right, that were not served. How are we tackling that? what are we doing from an accountability component there. So that'll go deeper in that presentation. That's not really a component for the handbook. The second a big change that it's nothing that we didn't talk about last time is the behavior matrix. And again, I'm really excited to see that roll out. That will be a component at all of our levels, especially the middle school and the high school, where we're going to need to inform parents, teachers, and students, what are the changes, what does this mean, how will we see that reflected on there. And I know it was something that we talked about in PTAC, that coming up with one of the responses of how we tackle vaping and some of the drug offenses out there. In our search and seizure, both our policy and in the handbook, I'll pull this up so I have it correct, there is it talks about that searches, they're all hands off, right? The student would be the person who's emptying a backpack, pockets, all of those things. But what happens if there is a refusal and there is not just reasonable, but like it's very probable that they do have. In the handbook and in our policy currently, it talks about that searches would be done in a non-violating, age-appropriate manner. Many of the districts around and across the state are using for very specific, not for every search, but for very specific searches, those metal detector ones. It's safer for, all involved as you're doing that. And so we had, discussed that previously, and that is something that will be implemented and as administrative procedure shared out there so that families know when that would be utilized, students would know that, and very specific, and that's something we'll put in an administrative procedure so it's forward-facing for everyone. I know there's many people who are like, you go into any concert, you go into any major, sporting event, all of that happens anyways as people are walking in there. This is not something kids are going to walk through the doors on. It'll be just for very, very specific, intentional opportunities. But I did want to, state that just because I know that was something we talked about and was supported through PTAC, and it was Mr. Dean along with the deans and high school administration have looked at how other schools are doing that and how do we do this in an appropriate manner. And again, I think the biggest change there is just notifying people of the when and that it's going to happen. And if it then ends up that we would need that at the middle schools, obviously we would learn from that at the high school and share that information out. All other recommendations that we talked about at the previous committee of the whole and that were approved in the elementary ECC and middle school handbook are all the changes that would be in here. So it was really just that attendance procedure of the reason that we held off on that. And then I felt that it would be a great opportunity just to share again there from the public knowledge about the searches and how we're adding another assistive tool to our toolbox. Any questions?
Not so much on that section, but I noticed another area of the handbook that had a lot of language changes. I wish Board Book was working right now, was the equal education opportunity and extracurricular opportunity. And I don't want to make assumptions, but were those language changes put in place due to the revisions of Title IX that came out in April?
So those changes, and this is what you can jump in here if you need, those changes were wording in the handbook that were changed because of policy changes. And I cannot recall, you might be able to recall what month we brought those policy changes forward, but those were legal changes and then policy changes that happened earlier in the school year. Majority of that was just rewording of some of the components that were in there. So what was updated in the handbook reflects the policy language that was changed earlier in the school year. Back in October? Okay.
Yeah, I guess my concern is of course, we want to provide all of our students, regardless of all of those areas that are mentioned in that section of the handbook, an equal opportunity. Where my concern comes in is because of the changes that were made in Title IX, and for those of you who don't know, Title IX has been a federal statute that's been in place for over 50 years that was designed to specifically protect women and girls for being discriminated against in our schools. And so somewhat under the radar, what the changes the Biden administration has made was to redefine sex, because that's an important definition as Title IX has stood for the last 50 years to include gender identity. And where my concern comes in, is that how are we going to address things if a biological male wants to play on the women's track team? How is that protecting and giving that kind of equal opportunity without violating another student's privacy?
And I know that IHSA and IESA both have very specific procedures that need to be done and that would need to be followed. I know our athletic departments and then those that work with athletics at the middle school are very well versed in that. We would go through what that procedure would be that would follow the law on that component. And I mean, if that is something that the board wants us to, to bring back at a later policy to kind of share some of that information during a policy or legislative committee, we absolutely could look at, doing that component on there. But it's very, very specific about the variety of things, if you're looking at those opportunities or athletics, that all districts in the state would have to follow for that.
Yeah, it's being opposed in right now in 26 states. I know that our congressman has successfully written a bill, and it passed in the House. It will probably get vetoed in the Senate. But because there is that possibility for things to get misinterpreted, I feel that voting yes on that specific area of language change without any supporting policy to address these concerns, I'm going to have to go against the yay vote.
Okay, now these policy changes, these wordings are in our policy, and so the handbook is just reflecting what policy does state.
Yeah.
I understand.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So if I understand correctly, because this happened in October, you said this was, I wasn't on the board at that time, so I'm trying to understand, the policy change went in October, and it's following what the changes are to overall from the federal Title IX changes?
No, that's not my understanding.
No, I think it was just
In general.
change.
In general, okay.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't specific.
No, not specific to that. Those were a variety of changes. There's been some of it, and not all of it is that. There's components that have changed in things like marital status. Some of the wording has just changed with some of those as laws or code has changed, and so that was that update in October. I do know that there are still things that are out there with Title IX. We actually have a training that's coming up, and there, may be additional changes down the line on that. But in terms of the equal opportunity and access to whether it would be activities, extracurricular things in the classroom, anything like that, that was all based on just changing in that language per state law or code. That was well before, anything that had happened with Title IX.
And so then Title IX still overrides whatever would be in our policy, or by choice, realistically,
The
right?
law, I mean, the law, whatever
It
the
depends.
law
Right,
is,
the law.
always,
Right,
always,
Correct.
but our policy is meant to,
Reflect,
yes.
Yes.
right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Because there's a financial string attached to that policy, right? If we're in violation of not accepting where there's federal funds being given, we could potentially be drawn into litigation or potentially have our federal funding revoked or reduced.
I mean, we don't get a lot of federal funding, not a lot. I mean, it's mostly meal money, right? Well.
We do have, Part B, the IDEA grant. We do have title funding. So there are several pieces, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. The IDEA grant alone is 1.9, so it's upwards of now 1.9 million. So we do receive quite a bit.
This might be something interesting to bring in the board attorney to have some discussion around. Because as I look at this and I understand what Mr. Thompson is saying, federal law is federal law. This is being challenged. Like describing right there, is being challenged and successfully challenged in multiple places. But if it is federal law, it's pretty hard for us in the school district to trump that, right? Because the federal attorneys come in on a Title IX case that follows this rule. You kind of have to follow it.
Yeah, and
We're going to have conflict.
absolutely. The difficult part is the changes that were made in April to Title IX go into effect August 1st. So barring any precedent that's set with the 26 states that have opposed it, it may or may not go, it could have precedents that other states can reject it. I think what the board should look at, again, and it may fly in the face of federal regulation, is developing policies that still are able to provide, because that's the impetus of the policy, it's the impetus behind our handbook, provide equal opportunity, right? So in this case, using my example of a biological male wanting to use the women's locker room or join the women's track team, what opportunities can we provide to those students that would still be fair and offer them an opportunity without encroaching on the rights and the privacy of women? I'm reminded of the George Orwell book, Animal Farm, that states all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And I don't want to be guilty and not doing my role as a board member and standing up for all students.
We do have procedures for exactly what you talked about with those different as well as other situations that may arise. And I absolutely think if the board, bringing in the board attorney or doing something like that around any of those policies, I would ask that let's get through the start of the school year. Let us get through those components there. But if the board would like that, we could add a section 2, a policy or legislative committee, in the coming months, we could absolutely look at that.
Very good.
Good discussion. Any other comments?
I had a follow-up to the first part of what you mentioned in regard to the change of the progressive matrix.
Yep.
I don't know what else to call it.
Yep.
So before it was very clearly spelled out, 1, 2, 3 infractions. By having this kind of flexibility, was there any discussion about blowback for fairness? Well, this happened to me, and this was my kid's consequence. However, this was the same circumstance, but my child had a different consequence. And so by introducing a lot of flexibility to it, now it flies in the opposite direction, and there isn't much balance on either side then.
Definitely, and that's actually something we see often in behavior, right? It's, well, Jessica may have gotten this, so-and-so may have gotten that, because they don't have the rationale or the background of what might be specifically going on.
Correct.
And it's very difficult for parents, it's very difficult for staff to hear, well, confidentiality, I can't talk about those things. There will be consistency, right?
Okay.
So if there's similar things, just like we've talked about with behavior, if there are similar reasons that a person is out or there's an attendance, again, maybe it is that they are just absolutely over and over and over that they're oversleeping, right? We're going to treat those situations similarly, but it might be different than, again, somebody who was at an out-of-state wedding or, that family vacation. There will be a response and consequences or plans put in place, but then those will all be treated consistently based on what are the reasons. And I think one of the things, when we move forward, I think this is a step in the right direction that we need to go. However, we'll utilize this year as we're tracking the reasons of the unexcused absences and trying to figure out, hey, what did we find effective this year as we were tackling this reason or this reason? And we may end up coming up with, at the end of the day, a similar matrix that we had for behavior that would show some of those. But I think until we're able to live this out with this first year of change, it also then gives that, again, right, fair is not always equal, right?
Correct.
We need to be consistent and we need to provide equity. But what that would look like, now, if we were saying the there are 4 students right now and they were all out for the same reason, and there was no circumstances that you really needed to take into consideration about one over the other, their response or their plan, consequence should look the same for all 4. And those are things that, just like we do with behavior, where they're meeting on a regular basis, at the high school level, and again, we can get more into this in August in the presentation, we have pods. We're going to have teams of people, dependent on the level of school. It might look a little bit different. Elementary doesn't have that pod approach where you have a dean, a social worker, the, counselors and whatnot, all in that one area. So the teams will look a little different depending on if it's an elementary, middle, or high school, that would all have those wraparound services for that specific student. So as we're going through these things, that team should be looking to make sure that there are calibrated, responses on how we're doing things so that it's equitable, but again, not necessarily equal for the person who is out for skipping class shouldn't be the same as one of those other reasons that are there. So I think this one is going to have to be a little bit of a learning year to figure out how do we best tackle each of those.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that you've got people out there already in the community saying it's not fair, they're not serving the detentions that they're getting anyway. And so we need to tackle, and again, even if that is an appropriate response for something and kids are not responding to that, we as adults need to figure out what is the way to tackle that and what should the responses be to those things. And so I know that this is going to be a heavy lift and it's going to be something that we need to stay accountable with. And we'll sneak peek here, like these are going to, attendance reports are looked at on a regular basis, but Mrs. Spears has worked a lot with a team, and now that having Dr. Hoyo in at the elementary level, we're going to have, like, it's on a calendar of when these things would be pulled to review. And again, we should be calibrating them just like we do the academic side of that. So I will, I'll guarantee that there'll be some updates and changes that we'll be bringing back at this time next year for this based on what we are learning. But it's got to be a little bit more open-ended so we can hit the root cause. But we do need to make sure from our end that we are being equitable and not having, too many of those cases of why is that different than this person? We'll always have that just because they don't know the full story, but we'll be able to tackle it with our responses.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
I think too, what we're having to do here is kind of re-education for everybody. It's not just the re-education of the students, it's re-educating our staff, it's re-educating the administrators, but most importantly, it's re-educating our parents, because the bulk of these absences are excused absences. And I think parents, and I'm a parent, you overlook the fact that, oh, it's my discretion to pull my child out of school for whatever I want to do, whether they have a headache or they want to go to a wedding or they want to go on vacation to Disney because I've got cheap airfare. It's my discretion. And we're not taking away that discretion. We're just saying that now we can have those conversations with parents and it's going to be more consistent. Whereas maybe at one school, the staff did have a conversation with the parents, but maybe it wasn't going at that other school. That's where we had the inequities going on.
And I think that education piece has got to be in very clear, concise data. I know as I was getting ready for that welcome back letter and reached out to Mrs. Spears, and you gave me her our report card, right? In 22-23, it was 25.8% of our students were chronically absent. 25%, 1 out of every 4. Now, I know it's probably not 1 out of every 4 when you're looking at what the level is, but that's disturbing for 17 or more absences. Those are the kinds of things that I think people need to hear, because I don't think that they realize those numbers add up, and then what is that impact that we'll be talking about on the academic, the behavioral, and the social emotional side. So.
But I think it's important to come in with an understand, like we're trying to understand why this is happening, because right now, by just saying all excused absences are this consequence, you aren't understanding the root cause. Now we'll actually be able to do so because Mrs. Spears will be able to dig into that information. So maybe next year at this time, we come in and we say, okay, well, most of the excused absences are because of this. So then maybe we revise the policy to hone in more consequences or different consequences based on the categorization that we have. That's absent right now. Okay.
Good discussion. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the 2024-25 student handbooks for Huntley High School, including the athletic handbook. That's 14.1.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Craddy. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Craddy?
Yes.
Mr. Bitten?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mrs. Murray?
Yes, and as far as talking to the attorneys, that's something we could always revise, or we need to moving forward. I'm okay with that now, so yes.
Mr. Thompson?
No.
Mrs. Wiley?
Yes.
All right, with that, the motion passes 6-1. Moving to 14.2, HR personnel. This is the personnel report. Anything yet?
Nothing much,
All
nothing
right.
yet.
So, I'll make a motion to approve the personnel report as listed in 14.2. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Craddy. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mr. Craddy?
Yes.
Mrs. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bivin?
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
All right, thank you for that. Motion passes 7-0. All right, 14.3, Northwestern Medicine Wellness Statement of Work, Dr. Spear.
Yeah, in front of you is the statement of work with Northwestern Medicine. This is for our annual wellness screening, and it's done in the building. This will be our 8th year that we're going into this. So I've provided some data there. As you can see, we kicked off in 2017 with the number of participants, and then the cost from Northwestern. We changed the plan after a couple of years, and they are, after a few years of being stagnant with their rate, I'm looking at a $2 increase per draw this time. So essentially what happens here is we set up at all the buildings opportunities for those employees who are on the wellness plan or on our health insurance plan. They can sign up and come have their blood drawn, usually within 24 hours. They get those results back. They go into a portal through a company called CHC, and everything is there for them. If there would be something that would be very alarming, they would receive a call from a nurse. They also have the option within the portal to send the results directly to their doctor. So this has been very successful. This is also part of the HEA contract where employees can receive a discount of $25 a month on the premium if they complete the blood draw and also turn in an annual physical that starts in January. So we have some language there in HEA that's lined up with this. So my recommendation to the board would be to approve the statement of work.
Any questions? All right, I'll make a motion to approve 14.3 Northwestern Medicine Wellness Statement of Work 2024. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. And roll call, please.
Mrs. Wiley?
Yes.
Mr. Craddy?
Yes.
Mr. Troy?
Yes.
Mrs. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Bivin?
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 7-0. Moving to 14.4, proposal for continued partnership with Build Capacity Consulting for 2024-2025. Dr. McCurdy.
I guess last month I did bring up that we were going to be focusing on some additional PD to bring to you guys to help support our teacher leaders as well as our administrators. This last year, Ms. Spears led under KPI 1.8 a comprehensive review of our multi-tiered systems of support. And what came from that, we in curriculum like a good rubric to help measure ourselves up to so that we can make sure we have some criteria to go towards. And we worked with our building admin. And we assessed ourselves. Cabinet took a view of that, as well as our building admin and some of our teachers. And we found quite a few areas, because we tend to be harsh on ourselves, we like to be harsh critics, we can always be better, that we want to grow in. And one of those areas that really came out was our PLC process. And if you actually remember last month, I think Mr. Aney came up and addressed and talked a little bit about some of the inconsistencies with PLCs across some of our schools and need to set some common criteria, so we concur. And one part of the work that we want, Paige, who has been working with us the last couple of years, she started with math, and then last year shifted more to some leadership pieces with elementary, and now we want to extend that to kind of a K-12 view, helping our teachers be able to have those conversations. It's tough to sit around a table with a group of colleagues sometimes and have honest conversations if a lesson didn't go as well as planned, or if data isn't responding as quickly with a certain group of students as possible. And so Paige has done a great job, gotten great reviews from our elementary teachers and coaches on being able to facilitate that. And so we want to extend that to a K-12 view this next school year. We are actually planning on working with about 50 to 60 staff members across the district, teachers and coaches kind of included in there, at least 2 or 3 times, not all at one time, just kind of spread out. And then also our entire admin team, which includes our building admin, department chairs, and coordinators. And so we have a proposal before you of about $52,500 for that contract. I did a little math, it does equate to a little bit less than $350, for each of our admin to get multiple days with her, and then less than $500 for all those teachers each to kind of get that time. And so we think it's a valued, use of those dollars. We plan to, utilize our Title II funds, which last year, we received right around $95,000, from, the government in that area. And so, we would leverage this towards, part of those funds. The rest of those funds we wrote in our consolidated, district, grant proposal, to go towards some more math and some literacy support. And so you'll see that going through there. So before you, we have a, proposal to, continue that work. Any questions?
So I'm not against this, so don't take this the wrong way. If I did my math correctly, I was taught the old way, it looks like she's getting almost $500 an hour. Am I misreading that?
That's a good question.
And that feels heavy, because I think it's a single consultant.
So she makes $32.50 a day, and so if you divide that up between, I guess, a 6-hour workday, that probably does feel there. I will say, when you have a consultant come travel, and that is she's actually lower, there are people that go up at $5,000 a day, some go as high as 10, and even higher, which is great. It's a lot, but yes, that would be.
And again, she may be worth every penny, it just feels a little high.
Yeah, and if we divide up the number of people who are in the room, you know, it makes you feel a little better with that personalized approach, exactly what we need, and kind of being able to work with her with that. When we go to a conference and we send a group, you know, or a teacher to a conference or a staff member to a conference, we're spending upwards of that for just one person to attend. And so I completely understand your question, but.
Well, and looking at it, that hourly rate is going to be higher. I think you're probably looking at it correctly. And that is, I know you said some will charge even more. I believe hers then does, full transparency, it's in there, that the travel expenses are on top of that, not in there. One of the things, and 100% support this, and glad to hear that you guys do too, those have spoken on this, that so far do, I talked to a number of the teachers on that little, when I sat down about talking about some of the things that really went well, what things did we listen and hear and do well, and what were some of those things that maybe we're moving forward in the right areas, but maybe could tweak a little bit. One of the things that I heard from so many staff members that were in there, again, those numbers were lower, but almost all of them brought up their work with Paige, if they were on that team leader, on how it's providing them tools to shift the conversation when they're sitting down with their team of teachers, right? In the past, some of those meetings may have been more logistical things that were happening, maybe planning components. So those are all important pieces that's shifting. When we're together, how are we looking at data? How are we analyzing what we're doing in the classroom, those instructional approaches, and how to have that conversation with our team? If we continue this, and we're then looking at that accountability piece, I think one of the things we talked about was potentially seeing if she then could fit in on some, now that we've had her training, having those team leaders go back and having her sit in on some of those meetings to do kind of in-session coaching about taking what they're learning, and is that being implemented, or how maybe to tackle a situation if there's some, you know, challenges that might be being presented, because every team is a little bit different. And I truly think that as we're able to have those conversations, not led just by administration, it's going to change those discussions that will directly impact instructional decisions, and hopefully we will continue to see an increase in just our student growth and achievement because of the conversations that are happening at that team level, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school.
Any other questions? I want to pull it forward. I don't know that I want to actually propose it.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the proposal for continued partnership with Building Capacity Consultants for the 2024-2025 year.
Second.
All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Bittman,
No.
Mr. Quagliano,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy,
Yes.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Moving to 14.5, visionary properties lease agreement. Ms. Gibb?
Okay, this is a recommendation long in the works. You might remember back in October, or Wiley, you were not here yet, but back in October, we presented to the board some feedback from our Light Steering Committee around our goal to find a permanent location for the Light program. And at that time, presented to the board some options to restructure the way we deliver transition services to our students who are 18 to 22, to not only offer them a single location for all of the transition services they need to be moving into adult life, but looking at providing those services in multiple locations. So we have maintained our lease with our contract agreement with MCC, where we provide education training opportunities for our students. We have entered into an intergovernmental agreement with Daigie Park, where we utilize, we will in the fall be utilizing the Park District for development of life skills. And we have been working on securing a lease with Visionary Properties, a local business in our area, to help us work with our students in transition of their vocational skills. That building has been under construction, and they've been working really hard and in partnership with us to ensure that they are meeting our state and regional Office of Education school codes so that we can utilize that facility as a school. We have been working back and forth, Mr. Altmeyer and I, and trying to get this lease up and running, and also ensure that we as a district aren't engaging in something until it's ready. We have a target date of September 1st, which is a little bit farther than what we had hoped, but in the grand scheme of things, we are really grateful that we're in a position to be bringing a lease forward for recommendation. I had added some key points in the memo indicating that the commencement of the lease would not begin until the occupancy, what is it called? Occupancy is,
From the ROE, right?
yeah, the ROE, there's an occupancy,
Permit?
Yes, certificate of occupancy is assigned and ready to go. So at that point, that's when the lease would commence, and there's some protective measures in there that our attorneys and obviously their attorneys have looked at as well. That was included in the board memo as an attachment, but we're very excited to bring this forward, and are asking for approval of a lease agreement for Visionary Properties for the Light program.
Any questions for Ms. Gill? I mean, this is obviously a good moment. This is something that we've been looking forward to on the Light side.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Should be a good thing. I guess, when I looked at the lease, and it might have been an older copy, I don't know if it's been updated, it looked like there were some things that were incomplete in it, like not checked off on like the renewal, which renewal options, there were multiple renewal options in there. And then I guess I had some questions. We're going to make improvements in there. The thing, do we have the approval to make those improvements? Because it says you can't do it without their authorization. I'm just looking for those kind of things. In the spirit of this, I'm behind it. I'm not having an issue with it. I just want to make sure that this is a lease.
Does that work?
Yeah, and by the way, Board Book and FMX and other systems are down because the cloud server is down and it's not on our end, so I did validate that. Yeah, I'd have to double check to see what you are looking at, but the lease agreement that we are using is kind of from the attorney of the Visionary Properties, does have some blank spaces in it, because they were kind of using a boiler template, but we did have our attorney finalize and scrub it, so we can make sure that nothing is going to change from the material concepts that you have in the memo, as well as what we have noted. I can double check what's in Board Book, but what you're approving should be really close, if not.
And that's what I just want to make sure. Again, I looked, I think it was a copy that I pulled up a few days ago. It was on my screen when I was looking through it.
Okay.
Mr. O'Meara, when I looked at, there was the two, there was the red line and the other, and I think part of it is, and how to open it up, because I went to the email that you had sent me, and I think the components that were on it, there's a couple blank spaces, we put the date that it's approved and when the contract is
Correct.
right, after that approval, but then there were some components, and I know you and I had spoken, you had spelled out like the X number of years, it was a 3-year term, and then we would have the ability to renew that for at least 2 additional
Terms
terms.
and a
those.
3-year
I think
term.
those were some of the blank spaces that might have been showing up,
Yeah,
on there, right?
it looked like there were 3 options for renewal, and to me, it wasn't clear which one was selected, so
Yeah.
that.
We'll make sure that is finalized on the final signed copies. But nothing is changing
Correct.
here forward with what we have presented tonight verbally.
And they understand what our plans are for the
Yeah,
building.
yeah,
They're
they
okay
do.
with it.
Yeah, what is the lease term again? You don't have the
It's
exact-
3 years.
3 years.
With the option to renew 2 additional terms,
All right.
for 3 years each.
$6,000 a month, I think.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a gross lease, so that is,
Yeah,
Covering everything.
covering everything.
Yeah.
What's the square footage on that?
it's 2,000,
I thought it was 2,300 something, but
yeah, I have to look back.
Hundred or thousand?
20,
The zero makes a difference.
I don't know, this was a question for Mr. Altmeyer.
What I can say is Ms. Perlmeyer did look at what is
Yeah,
the
I
cost
can't
per
pull it up.
square foot and all of those
Yeah.
things.
Yes, we did, and there's new construction.
It's in there, I'm pulling it up, yeah.
It is, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hot.
Yes.
If you could only
read it.
I know we did a lot of math for it.
And a lot of work.
So again, in the spirit of this, it'll be, I guess, I'll make sure when I sign it that
Yes.
it's good.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
I just,
If
in the
you'll
spirit
make sure
of
it's
this, I'm in
consistent.
favor of this. So I will move to approve 14.5 visionary cooperative lease agreement, after review, and it's written, can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 7-0. With 14.6, Easter Seals contract.
Yeah. Yeah, so last month we brought forward, just some updates on the grant money that we use to support some of our special education programs. One of the contracts that we're bringing forward tonight it's actually our largest contract, in special education. It's with Easter Seals. They provide a number of different opportunities for us in the district to, support our classrooms and teachers. So there's, we utilize these Easter Seals in a couple of ways. One is to offer professional development over the summer and then throughout the year through some coaching for our classroom teachers. And another way is to help our teachers with classroom setup at the start of the year, providing our classrooms that need structured teaching model and materials support our very complex learners, so that teachers come in and have all of those materials in classroom, their classroom set up to support our students. We've had this contract with Easter Seals for several years now. In fact, I think we gave the board an update early on in the year as one of the updates and highlights. And our teachers have reported just a lot of success with Easter Seals, and they really provide us with a leg up on some of the instruction that we provide our most complex learners. So we're bringing forward the contract for renewal in hopes that we can continue this contract this school year.
Any questions? I did do the math on this one too, and it was $2.75 an hour.
Oh, okay, well, so Easter Seals.
Sorry, Dr. McCurnell.
And it is, this is fantastic, it is really good.
It is. They have multiple people, because we divide that by, no.
So, I'll, unless there's any questions, I'll move forward with a motion to approve 14.6 Easter Seals contract as on the agenda. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Craddy. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Craddy,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano.
Yes.
Mr. Troy.
Yes.
All right. Motion 14.6 passes 7-0. Moving to 14.7, the payables. Mr. Altmeyer.
Nothing else to add.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Altmeyer? Not seeing any, I'll make a motion to approve 14.7 payables as listed in the agenda. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Quagliano. Can I have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano.
Yes.
All right, with that, 14.7 passes 7-0. We'll move to 14.8. Mr. Altmeyer, can you tell us about the revenue contracts? Do you have any
How many of
comments
them
about it?
are there? Just-
I'm down.
You're down.
I can't,
You're down.
I don't have, normally I have a hard copy of the revenue contracts, I do not. It didn't print, and my computer just died, and the cloud is down, I don't have it, I'm sorry, in front of me.
All right, does that have any concern for you?
No,
Okay.
no, I just want to make sure no one else is.
No, I think it's, I think there are only a couple of.
Yeah, that's it, that's fine.
I will, make a motion to, move forward with the 14.8 revenue contract as listed. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Quagliano. Can I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy.
Yes.
All right, with that, the motion passes 7-0. We'll move to 14.9, the FY 25 budget hearing. Mr. Altmeyer.
I do have that information in front of me, thank you very much. The next, four agenda items are standard, really standard operating procedure items every July. This one is to propose the FY 25 tentative budget, hearing, as well as the 30 days advance notice of the, display draft of the FY 25 budget. So administration is recommending, to have the budget hearing take place, on September 5th at 2024 at 6 p.m. So we'll have a special meeting on that day. And the budget display draft will be on display, at the front desk, as we normally do, 30 days in advance, starting August 5th, 2024. So this is just a recommendation to set that date for the budget hearing, so that we can go ahead and publish that in accordance with ISB and state policy as appropriate.
All right,
Answer any other questions?
questions for Mr. Altmeyer? Not seeing any, I will make a motion to approve the FY 25 budget hearing as outlined by Mr. Altmeyer and in the agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Quagliano. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Quagliano.
Yes.
Mr. Craddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Troy.
Yes.
All right, with that, we'll move to 14.10, IDOT hazardous busing resolution. Mr. Altmeyer.
Thank you very much. On an annual basis, this is another requirement, ISB requirement, that we must forward this resolution to our regional superintendent by July 31st. So on an annual basis, if there are changes within our hazardous bus designation, because we're making changes, we're adding sidewalks, we're adding crosswalks, we're adding people to work those crosswalks, we would go through a process to make sure that while we're still compliant with this resolution, because with this resolution, this is what allows us to pick up all of our students, so that we do not have to require our students that are less than 1.5 miles to walk, because certainly I think we all know in the campus-based environment that we have, that would not be necessarily safe for all of our students. So this is a resolution just reconfirming that we are of hazardous bus designation, and we're asking the board to approve the attached resolution so that we can go ahead and forward that off to the regional superintendent by month end.
All districts do this. Do nothing. Any questions for Mr. Altmeyer? All right, with that, I'll move forward with, to make a motion to approve IDOT hazardous busing resolution in 1410. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Quagliano. Can I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Craddy.
Yes.
Mr. Troy.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
All right, 1410 passes 7-0. We'll move to 1411, the national school lunch rate increase. Mr. Altmeyer.
Thank you very much. This is also a annual thing we do, because ever since the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, that act requires that pricing for full-price student meals must begin to match, well, the federal reimbursement rate, the national school lunch rate that we are receiving for free meals, minus the full price rate. So within that memo, I note that the current federal net reimbursement free lunch rate is $3.56, And as such, on an annual basis, with the exception of pandemic years, we are currently at 3.25 for our type A lunch rate, and we need to be compliant with that. Within that regulation, right, we need to continue to get as close as we can to that rate of 3.56, and we're required to do so with a minimum 10 cents a year increase, well, until we kind of get as close as we can to that. And so this is a 3% increase. This 10-cent increase from 3.25 to 3.35 is a 3% increase. We have seen increases, you know, for food purchases, well beyond that, even milk. But we do feel like with what we are doing for kids and how we are balancing our budget within food services, that we can continue to support that, only a 3% increase. And at this time, we don't feel that we need to increase it by 15 or 20 cents. So we are recommending to increase it by 10 cents, which is what we've done the last several years, from 3.25 to 3.35, asking for board approval.
All right, any questions for Mr. Altmeyer? With that, I will make a motion to approve the national school lunch rate increase in 1411. Can I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to give that one to Mr. Troy. Yep. All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Murray.
Yes.
All right, my favorite every year when it comes up, 1412, equipment declared as surplus. Mr. Altmeyer.
Thank you very much. This is something we also do sometimes, several times a year, just to pull our technology equipment out of service that we currently have in service. And the majority of the things on this list, because I know you can't see this list, this time are primarily Chromebooks, some laptops that we're taking out of service as we replace those year after year. I do see a lot of Casio calculators. So we do have a lot of those we're taking out of service, so that's also interesting. But nothing else nothing else has been as exciting as it has in the past.
But I think Mr. Quagliano had a question about what the useful life is of a Casio calculator and how does it?
I will get back to you on that. That's a great question.
Helping me look,
So,
Sorry, any other questions?
Mr. Rankosik did say he found a few overhead projectors over in Conley, so you might see those on the next list. Unless Conley is saving them for some reason. We'll see.
Okay. Not having any more questions or commentary, I'll make a motion to vote on 1412, equipment declared as surplus. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. Can I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano.
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy.
Yes.
All right, with that, 1412 passes 7-0. We move to 1413, minutes. Any questions about the minutes that are June 6, 2024 and June 20, 2024? No questions on that. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes in 1413. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Bivin,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiley,
Yes.
Mr. Troy,
Yes.
Mr. Quagliano,
Yes.
Mrs. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Craddy.
Yes.
All right, with that, we have moved to 15, public comment. Any public comments? All right, with that, we move forward to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:59 PM.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The meeting is adjourned.